Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a reclusive ex-prosecutor's land is targeted by a power-hungry HOA president, a silent war ignites. Armed with a loyal XK9 and ironclad surveillance, he faces lies, lawsuits, and sabotage. But she forgot one thing: he's trained to destroy cases built on deception. It was just past noon when I rolled the last strip of hardware cloth into the storage shed and checked the perimeter one last time. The sun beat down lazily through the pines that framed the eastern edge of my 3-acre lot. I'd spent the morning reinforcing a section of the back fence where a buck had tried to muscle through the week prior. Normally, I'd leave him be. Nature has a better track record than most people. But that section backed into the Cedar View Ridge HOA's beloved scenic outlook. And frankly, I'd had enough of the passive-aggressive commentary from their hikers. I live alone, unless you count Sarge, which I do. He's a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois, my former K9 partner. After I left the DA's office and my badge behind, Sarge came with me. Best damn decision I ever made. He's lean, fast, surgically trained, and loyal in a way humans just don't understand. On command, he'll ignore you. On another, he'll keep you right where he wants you until I show up with the paperwork. This property wasn't just land. It was my recovery, my fortress, my clean slate. I bought it in cash 3 years ago, knowing full well it sat just outside HOA jurisdiction. I restored the cabin myself, replaced every inch of plumbing, laid the new roofing with my own hands, and spent more money than I'd care to admit installing perimeter security. Motion sensors, infrared trail cams, steel-gated access, and a full sign. Suite that screamed, "No trespassing," louder than a shotgun. Which, for the record, I also own. Now here's the part you need to know about Cedar View Ridge. It's a planned community filled with tight fences, tighter smiles, and one president by the name of Karen Shores, 56. Former community college law professor, and a woman so obsessed with aesthetics, she once demanded a neighbor repaint their mailbox because it clashed with the environment. I only know this because said neighbor now sends me Christmas cookies in exchange for borrowing my wood splitter. That's the kind of man I've become. A quiet one with quiet tools, who values quiet above all else. Karen's a special case, though. The HOA sits just beyond my western fence line, and the scenic outlook, their little hilltop picnic spot, looks down over part of my property. It's not her land, and she knows it, but I've caught her pointing at my backyard with her iPad like she's cataloging war crimes. Last month, I overheard her telling a group of sun-hatted hikers that my cluttered backlot was environmentally disruptive. Funny, considering the only disruption here is the HOA's obsession with micromanagement and ornamental mulch. Anyway, I wasn't thinking about any of that when I threw my overnight bag into the truck that Friday afternoon. I had a reunion in Sacramento, some old faces from my days in the DA's office, a few drinks, probably a few scars that still needed comparing. I double-checked the perimeter logs, toggled the cameras to remote access, and gave Sarge his final set of instructions. Territory. One word. That's all it takes. It flips something in him. He won't hunt, won't bite unless provoked, but he'll patrol the perimeter like he's guarding the crown jewels. I loaded his feeders, refilled the water supply, and gave him a solid rub behind the ear. I was gone by 3, rolled out toward the interstate while the late October wind rolled pine needles across the road like dry leaves scattering from something coming. Saturday night, somewhere between a second round of bourbon and a retired judge reenacting a courtroom strip search gone wrong, my phone buzzed. Motion alert, back perimeter. That in itself wasn't unusual. Raccoons, deer, hell, even a bear once. But something in the frequency of the pings made me pause. I stepped outside, let the night air cool the whiskey, and opened the live feed. There she was, Karen. In khakis, hiking shoes, and a lime green vest with HOA President printed on the back like it was a police badge. She was scaling my 8-foot steel mesh fence like a woman half her age, clutching a canvas bag and what looked like a tablet or clipboard. I watched her dangle one leg over, grunt, and drop awkwardly onto the gravel inside. She took a moment to stand upright, brushing herself off like this was a sanctioned inspection. Then she started walking across my yard. I didn't move, just watched as she looked around with purpose, pausing occasionally to jot something down. I muted the audio for a second, then toggled it back on. Her voice came through faintly. Not up to code. Disgraceful. should have been cleared after the storm. She was talking to herself. Or maybe to the imaginary jury inside her HOA tribunal. That's when it happened. From the shadows behind the tool shed, Sarge emerged, silent, low, precise. He moved like smoke. Karen didn't see him at first. He didn't bark. He just angled toward her, slow, steady, ears forward. She looked up. There was a beat. Just a second where their eyes locked, then she screamed. Not a startled yelp, but a full, theatrical, "Oh my God, I'm in a horror movie" scream. She dropped her tablet, stumbled backward, tripped over a garden hose, and went down hard on her hip. Sarge didn't touch her. He stood 5 feet away, tail stiff, eyes on me through the camera. He was waiting. Karen, from her position on the ground, scrambled to get her phone out. Through the mic, I heard her breathless, furious voice. "Get away from me! I'm calling the police. That dog tried to kill me. I'm with the HOA. I have rights." She aimed the phone up at her own face, flipping it into selfie mode to record her scratches, small abrasions on her forearm and one on her cheek from the gravel likely, and launched into some nonsense about an aggressive animal, unmarked property, and, my personal favorite, probable illegal logging activity. I just stood there in the Sacramento hotel parking lot, watching it unfold like an episode of bad reality TV. Sarge hadn't moved an inch. Neither had I. It was going to be a long night. I was still staring at the screen when Karen rolled onto her side and fumbled for her phone like a drunk raccoon digging for a dropped earring in a sewer. I watched her flip the camera toward Sarge, still 5 feet away and looking more bored than aggressive. His posture was textbook K9, upright, ears perked, eyes locked. No bared teeth, no snarling, not even a growl. The only danger she was in was from her own clumsiness and whatever bacteria might be crawling up from the gravel rash blooming on her left forearm. Then she started dialing. I heard it plain as day through the camera mic. 911. Yes, emergency. I've been attacked by a dog on private property. No, I mean, well, it's technically open access. I'm the president of the HOA here, and I have legal authority to be on site. I pinched the bridge of my nose, suddenly sober. I'd seen cases fall apart from less convincing lies than this, and she was already weaving her tapestry of bullshit like a pro. Even worse, she wasn't just trying to play the victim. She was attempting to turn the law against me. A man trained in it. A man who used to prosecute people like her for abusing systems they didn't understand. By the time I got back inside the hotel and grabbed my laptop, the sheriff's department dispatch was already logged on the county's public alert scanner. Disturbance call, animal attack, injuries reported, officers en route. I clicked over to my property app and unlocked the live camera feed from the front gate. The cruisers pulled in less than 10 minutes after her call. 2 units, full lights. Karen, meanwhile, had hobbled her way to the back gate, where she waited dramatically against the fencing, cradling her wrist and giving herself a full monologue, as if a Lifetime movie crew had set up off-screen. She flagged the officers down like a castaway spotting a cargo ship. One of the deputies exited the cruiser, started asking questions. Karen went straight into tears and statements. That dog tried to maul me. I was checking on possible code violations. He leaves debris in full view of the ridge, rotting logs, rusted equipment, and now he's hiding an aggressive animal. To her credit, she kept a straight face. But then the deputy said something that stopped her cold. "Ma'am, the signs at every entrance say, 'No trespassing.' There's an electronic lock on the gate, and the camera clearly shows you climbing the fence." Her face didn't just fall. It collapsed like a bad souffle. She tried to pivot, claimed the gate had been left open, that she assumed access was permitted under HOA easement rights, that she was responding to community reports of illegal activity. I watched one of the officers wander the fence line with a flashlight, scanning the gate's latch and the keypad, both still locked. Then they examined the warning signs. I had 6 of them just on that stretch. 2 no trespassing, 1 surveillance in use, 1 private property, and 1 personal favorite. Smile, you're being prosecuted. They requested access to the footage, and I emailed them a compressed file. From the moment Karen appeared at the fence to the second she fell. It included audio. The part where she muttered, "He'll never know I was even here," came through loud and clear. The officer's posture shifted. The questioning turned less sympathetic. One of them took a statement from Karen while the other called me directly. I answered on the first ring. "Mr. Brooks, Deputy Fletcher here. Just confirming, this is your property at 325 Pine Hollow Trail." "Correct. Gated." Not HOA affiliated. Registered under Brooks Holdings, LLC. Got it. And you're out of town, sir. Yes. Sacramento. But I have remote access to all cameras and logs. I've already sent the footage to your department's records email. A pause. Well, that's helpful. We've got a woman here claiming she had a right to be on site, but from what I see, this looks more like unlawful entry. We'll file a report. We've requested EMS. She's claiming a wrist injury and some scratches. I glanced back at the feed. Karen was now holding her arm like it had been amputated, milking every wince. I assume she's naming the dog in her statement, I asked. She is. Claims he attacked without warning. The footage paints a different picture. I exhaled, relieved, but still irritated. I'd seen enough courtroom tactics to know a bad faith actor can bury you in process. Karen didn't need to win a criminal case. She just needed enough paperwork and drama to trigger civil court proceedings. She was laying groundwork, building narrative, positioning herself not just as a victim, but as a defender of order. After the ambulance took her away, and yes, she insisted on being transported despite having only cosmetic bruises, the deputies walked the property again. Sarge, by then, was resting on the porch like none of this had happened. They didn't approach him. Smart men. I received the incident report an hour later via email. It included a clear summary: unauthorized entry over locked fence, no aggression observed from canine, no evidence of attack, signs posted. No criminal charges recommended, but the moment I saw the little box checked at the bottom, civil complaint pending, I knew Karen wasn't finished. She didn't want justice. She wanted control. 3 days. That's how long it took for the hammer to drop. I'd just come back from Sacramento, still shaking off the smell of hotel detergent and stale bourbon when the envelope arrived, thick, stiff, and smug as hell. Certified mail, signature required. I signed without blinking, already knowing exactly what was inside. Civil complaint, filed in Humboldt County Superior Court. The plaintiff? Karen Shores, acting in her capacity as HOA president and private individual. The charges? A neat little pile of legal spaghetti. Negligence resulting in injury. Harboring a dangerous animal. Emotional distress. Unsafe property conditions. And my personal favorite, failure to maintain secure perimeter fencing resulting in bodily harm. She wanted $350,000. And not just that. She also requested a court-ordered removal or restriction of Sarge, labeling him a potentially lethal animal, plus a demand for written apologies to the Cedar View Ridge HOA for the unnecessary trauma caused. I laughed once, a dry single exhale, then read the complaint again. It was well written, not professional grade, but disturbingly competent. Pages of wordy, inflated nonsense, all designed to paint her as a civic hero brought low by a rogue homeowner's negligence. I knew what this was. She wasn't just suing for money. This was a power play, a message to her neighborhood, break the aesthetic, and this is what happens to you. I was her example, her case study. Well, I've been cross-examined by murderers, meth cooks, and politicians with God complexes. I've walked out of bomb threats and into courtrooms with blood on my shoes. But this was personal. This was Karen weaponizing the law the same way some people swing a garden rake. So, I called my attorney, Greg Sloan. We worked together back in the day when I was on the prosecutorial side, and he was defending the kind of people I used to chase. Sharp guy. Looked like a farmer, talked like a sociopath, billed like an offshore casino. Perfect. I sent him the complaint. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Jesus Christ, Greg muttered. She's either delusional or playing long ball. These charges are garbage, but she's smart about it. Civil court eats this kind of theater up. She's building a case, public image, community angle. She wants to create precedent, take down the non-HOA lot that brings down property values. You'll want to countersue, he said immediately, aggressively, and early. Already planning to. And that dog of yours. Still got that K9 certification paperwork? In a fireproof safe with backup copies and 3 cloud accounts. Good, because she's not just coming after your land. She's trying to gut your authority. She'll push for court-ordered removal of Sarge and label your property a nuisance. There was a pause. Randy, Greg added, voice lower now. She's not after money. She's trying to make sure no one ever tells her no again. Over the next 48 hours, I watched her build the narrative. The Cedar View Ridge HOA's website posted a community safety bulletin detailing an unfortunate canine incident that had left our board president injured while conducting a community wellness inspection. The post never used my name but included a convenient satellite photo with a red outline around my property. Facebook groups lit up. HOA members posted about how their children walk near that property and how someone needs to do something before a child gets mauled. Karen responded to comments like a seasoned PR manager, not directly accusing, but fanning the flames just enough to stay above the drama. Someone even uploaded a doctored version of the security footage, trimmed to show only Sarge's emergence from the shadows and Karen screaming. No context. No trespassing, no fence climb, just a scary dog and a terrified woman. I had the unedited version, of course, time-stamped, verified, but truth doesn't travel as fast as fear, and Karen knew it. Meanwhile, I started digging, not just through the legal path, but deeper, into the HOA records, the community development agreements, and recent vendor contracts. That's when I first saw the name, Terra Vista Outdoor Solutions, a landscaping and eco-integration contractor. Their logo had started popping up on new signage around the HOA walking trails. I'd seen them installing benches at the Scenic Outlook a few months back. They'd also filed a bid for a proposed project labeled Phase 4 Green Corridor Expansion. The corridor map? It ended, rather neatly, where my property began. I requested public filings, HOA newsletters, land use permits, and there it was, buried in the notes from a closed board meeting, a memo suggesting that if Parcel 37 were to be annexed or sold, the HOA could expand its jurisdiction to include the full ridge perimeter, ensuring long-term visual, consistency, and community benefit. Parcel 37 was me. And who had signed off on that memo? Karen Shores. This wasn't a safety issue. It wasn't about a dog. It wasn't even personal resentment. It was about land, territory, optics, power. She wanted my land folded into the HOA's reach, either voluntarily or by legal suffocation. Problem was, she'd underestimated the man she picked a fight with. I'd spent 20 years in law enforcement. I'd built cases from single cigarette butts and destroyed fake alibis with time-stamped receipts. And now she'd handed me motive, paper trails, a manipulated community, and a civil complaint full of holes. She wasn't the only one who knew how to build a case. There's a moment, somewhere between the sting of being attacked and the silence that follows, when your brain shifts. Most people freeze. They panic, spiral, or shut down. But for people like me, the ones who've spent years dissecting lies under oath and threading together felonies from fragments, we go cold. We calculate. So when Greg sent over the paperwork for our counterclaim, I didn't just sign it. I sharpened it. We weren't just responding. We were retaliating. $1.2 million. That was the figure we put on it. Emotional distress? Sure. Property damage? Absolutely. But we went further. Intentional trespassing. False allegations leading to public defamation. Abuse of civil process. Attempted interference with lawful animal handling under California Penal Code. Deliberate misrepresentation of HOA jurisdiction. And most damning of all, evidence of a coordinated effort to devalue and displace a private property owner for the benefit of a third-party vendor. Karen hadn't filed a lawsuit. She detonated a minefield. Greg was surgical about it. He embedded in the complaint full resolution screenshots of the security footage with timestamps and audio transcripts. He included the dispatch log from the sheriff's office, where officers had recorded no aggression observed from canine. He attached a veterinary behaviorist's affidavit verifying Sarge's training and response patterns, noting that restraint and non-engagement under stress was a key part of his certification. But the crown jewel, that was the internal HOA memo we got from an anonymous source, a scan of an email sent by Karen, time-stamped 2 weeks before the incident, to Terra Vista Outdoor Solutions. It read, "Once we address the Parcel 37 situation, I believe your firm will be uniquely positioned to lead Phase 4 implementation. I anticipate a clean transition if the current owner can be shown non-compliant or hostile to community integration." It didn't just reek of overreach. It reeked of a premeditated setup. The timing was perfect. While Karen was posturing online and feeding her propaganda machine, I filed a subpoena for all communications between the HOA board and Terra Vista for the past 6 months. Greg pushed for expedited discovery based on signs of a fraudulent civil complaint designed to mask a land acquisition effort. I also reached out to a contact in the assessor's office, a guy I'd helped once with a cyberstalking case involving GPS trackers on his teenage daughter's car. He owed me. I didn't call in many favors, but this one was worth it. He confirmed what I suspected. Terra Vista had recently made informal inquiries about Parcel 37, my lot, to determine whether it might be available for recreational repurposing. Their inquiry had been made just 4 days after Karen's fence flop performance. So this wasn't just personal, it was business. Ugly, manipulative, and coordinated. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more absurd, Greg got a call from Karen's attorney, a man named Todd Winfrey, who sounded like he'd rather be eating glass than representing her. Todd was trying to open a dialogue, which is code for "we think we might be losing." He floated the idea of settlement discussions, maybe a non-disclosure agreement, maybe a modest retraction in exchange for reduced damages. Greg didn't even blink. "Absolutely not," he said. "Your client climbed a fence, trespassed, triggered a trained K-9, lied to law enforcement, filed a fraudulent suit, and manipulated public opinion in an attempt to seize land she doesn't control. The only thing we're open to discussing is whether the DA wants her indicted for conspiracy." There was a long pause on the line. Then Todd said, "Hypothetically, if there were documentation of communications between the HOA board and this vendor, would that fall under any kind of privilege?" "No," Greg said flatly. "And if it exists and isn't turned over, that's obstruction." That was the first time we felt the air shift, like the oxygen around Karen's false narrative was starting to thin. The next day, a flash drive arrived at Greg's office in an unmarked envelope, no return address. Inside were PDFs, dozens of them, of HOA emails, meeting transcripts, and budget drafts, including a line item labeled Scenic Expansion Analysis, with an asterisk that read, "Assumes eventual integration of Parcel 37. We filed a motion to compel full disclosure." The court set a hearing for the following month. Meanwhile, I had the documents vetted, dated, and submitted into preliminary evidence. Karen didn't respond publicly. Not yet, but her tone online shifted. She went from local heroine fighting for safety to posting flower photos and passive-aggressive quotes about standing strong against hate. It was damage control. She knew the story was slipping. Sarge, of course, didn't care. He just watched the tree line and listened to the wind. But I was hunting now, not just for justice, for precedent. Karen had built her career on control, of students, of neighbors, of rules she bent to fit her vision. But she'd underestimated a man who once dissected the digital footprint of a crime lord, using nothing but metadata and public tax filings. She wanted a war over territory. She was about to learn what it felt like to lose one. On record. I was splitting wood when it happened. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the eastern fence line, and I'd just taken the top off a stubborn oak log when Sarge shot to attention. No growl, no bark. Just that sudden stillness, like every nerve in his body had activated at once. His ears locked west, eyes narrowed on the far tree line. Then I heard it, a sharp, high-pitched scream. It wasn't the usual "I'm annoyed" kind of HOA scream. This was primal, terrified, and young. I dropped them all, vaulting the porch steps 2 at a time as Sarge bolted ahead of me toward the source. The screaming was coming from just beyond my fence, the stretch near the HOA walking path, right where the woods grew thicker. I could see movement, a small shape stumbling backward from the underbrush. It was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, backing away from something I couldn't see yet. Then, just behind the boy, a flash of gray and brown. Coyote. Big one, too. Mangy, bold, and way too close for comfort. Sarge didn't hesitate. He hit the gate full speed, pushed the emergency release with his paw, something I'd trained him to do in case of fire, and launched himself over the threshold. He was on the coyote in seconds, not biting, not tearing, but making enough noise and motion to convince the animal it had made a very bad decision. The coyote turned tail fast, vanished back into the brush, and Sarge stopped exactly where the kid stood frozen, arms shielding his face. Sarge didn't touch him, just stood between the boy and the trees, body still, head high, watching the woods for another threat. By the time I got there, the kid was sobbing. Not hurt, just shaken. I recognized him. Lucas, Melissa Hargrove's son. Melissa was one of the newer HOA members, always polite, kept her distance. Her property bordered the trail. I scooped Lucas up, called Melissa, and walked him back to her backyard. She arrived in a panic, but when I told her what had happened and she saw Sarge calmly following behind, her eyes went wide. "He saved my son," she whispered. "I didn't even know coyotes came this close to the path." "They don't," I said. "Unless they stop being afraid of people." Melissa hugged Lucas, then turned to me with tears still in her eyes. "I don't know what Karen's been saying, but if anyone in this neighborhood is dangerous, it's not your dog." I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked Sarge home. Later that evening, Melissa posted about the incident on the HOA Facebook group. She didn't name me or Sarge directly, just thanked a kind neighbor and his incredibly well-trained dog for intervening when a dangerous wild animal approached Lucas near the back trail. But people read between the lines. The comments exploded. "I thought the dog was aggressive. Wait, is this the same dog Karen said attacked her? Maybe the HOA should stop trying to control properties they don't own and focus on putting up coyote deterrence." A few days later, the security footage from my property leaked to a larger neighborhood group. The full version this time. Sarge calmly patrolling, Karen climbing the fence, the stumble, the camera's audio catching her muttering that she didn't care if I found out. Suddenly the tide shifted. People started questioning Karen's story. Neighbors who'd once nodded along with her posts now commented things like, "I feel misled," or "Why didn't the board disclose all the footage?" Then came the emails, anonymously at first, then more openly. HOA members reaching out to Greg, forwarding meeting minutes, emails, notes from board discussions. The narrative of neighborhood safety had been paper-thin from the start, and now it was unraveling. One email in particular stood out. It was from a board member named Paul Nguyen, a guy I'd never met in person but remembered seeing at a distance. Quiet, heavy-set, always walking with earbuds in. His message was blunt. "I didn't sign off on the Phase 4 corridor map. Karen said it was a routine survey and no one's land would be affected. I've seen the lawsuit. She lied. Let me know how I can help." We scheduled a meeting. Paul laid everything out. Karen had been pushing for visual conformity for months. She wanted my lot brought into the fold, but the board was never fully informed about her methods. She handled the Terra Vista contract personally. She referred to my land as non-compliant wilderness in at least 2 meetings. Paul gave us internal documents, emails with vendor reps, drafts of project outlines with my parcel already mapped for future transformation. One document, dated 2 months before the incident, even included a mock-up of a community gazebo and overlook area with my cabin photoshopped out of the frame. They'd literally erased my house. Meanwhile, Sarge had unintentionally become a local legend. Kids waved at him from the trail. A post titled "The Real Guardian of Cedar Ridge" made the rounds with a picture of him sitting stoically on my porch, tongue out, eyes sharp. Someone even dropped off a rawhide bone and a thank you card at my gate. No name, just "For the goodest boy, a grateful mom." I didn't smile much those days, but that one got me. Behind the scenes, Greg was organizing everything into a timeline. Each new document was another nail. And Karen, she was quieter now. Fewer posts, no more updates about the aggressive dog case, just photos of flower beds and passive quotes about enduring storms. But the damage was done. The storm was just beginning. The courthouse smelled like mildew and bureaucracy. Greg and I walked through the metal detector just before 9 a.m., trailed by 2 bankers' boxes of evidence, one very agitated paralegal, and the distinct silence that comes with knowing your opponent is about to walk into their own execution. Karen was already there, front row, pearl earrings, navy blazer, sitting up so straight she looked like her spine had been reinforced with steel rods and entitlement. Her lawyer, Todd Winfrey, sat next to her, flipping through notes like a man mentally calculating how many more months of student loan payments this fiasco would cover. This was a preliminary hearing, not the main event yet, but enough for the judge to consider the motions, rule on admissibility, and determine whether civil and counter-civil suits would proceed to full trial. Greg was calm. That meant I could stay cold. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Trina Walker, had the deadpan delivery of someone who'd spent decades listening to people like Karen twist the English language into knots of suburban righteousness. I liked her already. We submitted our exhibits, the full security footage, the dispatch logs, the audio transcript with Karen's little off-mic confession. He'll never know I was even here. The HOA emails, the Terra Vista correspondence, the parcel mock-ups, and, of course, the glowing incident report from the sheriff's office stating in precise government-certified language, "No aggression observed. Fence was locked. Trespassing occurred." Then came the unexpected. Todd, clearly cornered, requested a continuance based on newly discovered information. Judge Walker asked him what the hell that meant. He hesitated, then said, "We believe there may be privileged communications that the defense acquired through improper channels." Greg stood. "Your Honor, the documents were submitted anonymously, reviewed, and confirmed against existing email headers. Furthermore, several were voluntarily provided by current and former HOA board members, including Mr. Paul Nguyen, who is prepared to testify under oath that the plaintiff misled the board." Judge Walker narrowed her eyes at Karen. "Ms. Shores, did you represent to your HOA board that the defendant's property was available for annexation or that it would be brought into compliance through legal action?" Karen opened her mouth, paused, then said, "I was advocating for community. Harmony. That did it." The courtroom murmured. Judge Walker held up a hand. "Let me be clear. This hearing is not about whether your personal definition of harmony was met. It is to determine if you intentionally misused your authority as an HOA representative to manufacture a civil complaint and trigger legal mechanisms that would benefit a private contractor with whom your organization had a non-transparent relationship." Todd mumbled something about the board having discretion. Greg dropped the bomb. "We've subpoenaed the HOA's full contractor history. Terra Vista was granted 4 contracts in the last 18 months, all without competitive bidding. All under the plaintiff's recommendation. That's not discretion. That's conflict of interest." Judge Walker tapped her pen on the bench, visibly annoyed. "I'm going to allow this to proceed," she said, "but I'm expanding the scope. I want full disclosure from both parties within 10 business days. And if I find out this court was used to advance a private land deal under the guise of public safety, I will recommend criminal referral." Karen's expression flickered. Just once. A tiny, involuntary twitch at the corner of her mouth, like something in her skull was cracking. That afternoon, the story broke in local news. HOA president under fire for alleged land scheme. Dog attack incident in question. Someone, probably one of Paul and Nguyen's people, had leaked portions of the case file to a reporter from the Humboldt Register. The article included a blurry screenshot of Karen climbing the fence, zoomed in just enough to see her purse catching on the top rail, and her face twisted in frustration. The comment section was brutal. "Didn't know trespassing was part of HOA duties. Imagine getting clowned by a dog and a security camera. Where do I get a Malinois like Sarge? Asking for a friend." Greg grinned when he saw the last one. "Public opinion is a fickle thing," he said. She lit the match and thought she could control the fire. Over the next week, things spiraled. Karen's once loyal followers began turning, not just online, but in formal HOA channels. A petition circulated calling for her resignation. Someone spray-painted "No trespassing means you" on the scenic Outlook sign. HOA members began questioning other board decisions, contracts, landscaping fees, even the price of the stupid pavers at the community pool. Then came the call from the DA's office, not to me, to Greg. A junior assistant DA, a woman named Rena Mendoza, someone I remembered training back when I still wore a badge, was requesting a meeting. She'd seen the court documents, the email chains, the forged property outlines. She wanted to talk about possible charges, filing a false police report, abuse of authority, obstruction, attempted fraud. She's not just looking at civil liability anymore, Greg told me. She's looking at jail time. I nodded, looking out over the ridge. It was strange watching someone who built their life on control slowly lose the grip finger by finger. Karen had filed a lawsuit thinking I was just some backwoods recluse with a good dog and a bad lawn. She had no idea I used to make cases like hers disappear under the weight of their own contradictions. And now, it was her turn. You could tell something was about to break just by the way the HOA meeting was announced. Not the usual clipped, cheerful email with bullet points and flower borders. This one was terse. Just a single paragraph with a date, time, and location. No agenda, no inspirational quotes about community synergy, and no mention of Karen. It was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp in the Cedar View Ridge Community Hall, the same over-renovated barn where the HOA hosted wine tastings and board game nights no one actually enjoyed. I'd never been inside, never needed to, but this time I was invited. Formally. Not as a neighbor, not even as a defendant. As a speaker. I brought Greg, of course, and a USB drive full of select slides. Didn't need to bury them in legalese. Just the right clips, right emails, and the one damning memo with Karen's signature under the phrase, annexation of Parcel 37 can likely be achieved via community pressure or legal stress. It wasn't a hearing. It was a reckoning. The room was packed. At least 60 people. Families, retirees, young couples, a few that looked like they still couldn't tell if they were on Karen's side or just confused by everything. Paul and Guyen sat near the front with a stack of printouts. Melissa Hargrove nodded at me from the corner, Lucas by her side with a little drawing of Sarge tucked under his arm. Karen was there too. Barely. She sat off to the side, face drawn, pearl earrings traded for studs, her expression tight and silent. She wasn't smiling anymore. No warm, thank you for being here. No rehearsed opening. Just a folded paper in her lap and a look like she knew exactly what was coming. Paul opened the meeting with a motion to discuss recent legal challenges and a misuse of HOA authority. It passed unanimously. Then he gave me the floor. I kept it simple. First, the footage. Karen scaling the fence. Her voice on the mic. He'll never know I was even here. The footage of Sarge calmly holding distance. No contact, no aggression, just presence. Then the documents, emails, vendor bids, HOA internal memos describing Parcel 37, my property, as a non-integrated zone scheduled for eventual absorption. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't have to. By the time I was done, the silence was nuclear. Then someone finally said it. A woman in the third row, soft-voiced but clear. She tried to frame him. Another added, she lied to the police. Then louder, she used our dues to run a personal vendetta. Karen finally stood, not angry, just tired. She looked around the room like she was trying to find someone, anyone, who might still see her as the authority figure she'd once been. No one met her eyes. I acted in the best interest of the community, she said. Greg stood up beside me. Ma'am, you falsified justification to enter private land, coordinated with a vendor to pressure the owner into either compliance or sale, and filed a fraudulent civil suit to mask the effort. That's not community stewardship. That's corruption. Paul made the motion to call for a vote of no confidence. The count? 58 in favor, 1 abstention. Karen didn't even raise her own hand. The vote passed. Karen was officially removed as HOA president, but that wasn't the end. That very same night, officers from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office served her with a notice to appear. Not arrested, not yet, but officially charged with false reporting, abuse of process, and criminal trespass. D.A. Mendoza wasn't bluffing. Karen left without a word, just gathered her papers, and walked out as quietly as she'd once climbed my fence. In the days that followed, the HOA imploded. 2 other board members resigned, citing ethical concerns. Terra Vista's contract was terminated. A full audit was announced, and a growing movement inside the HOA began pushing to dissolve the entire organization and shift to a voluntary community council model. That was when I got the email from one of the new temporary board liaisons. Dear Mr. Brooks, in light of recent events and your property's non-affiliation with the Cedar View Ridge HOA, we would like to extend our apology for the distress caused and offer to officially record a boundary statement acknowledging that your land is fully independent of HOA oversight. It ended with a request for a meeting. I ignored it. Instead, I walked Sarge out past the old trail where it all began. He sniffed the air, turned once in a circle, then sat down in his usual spot near the fence line. A hawk flew overhead. Quiet. Free. He watched it for a long time, eyes focused, ears twitching. Karen had tried to control everything, the view, the narrative, even the land itself. And now she had nothing. 3 months later, the sign at my front gate changed. It used to be a plain rust-resistant placard, private property, no trespassing, functional, forgettable. Now it reads, private land, trespassers will be recorded, arrested, and sued. Sarge patrols. Good luck. I had it etched on custom steel, black lettering on brushed aluminum, minimalist but firm, the kind of warning that doesn't blink. The lawsuit is over. Karen's civil complaint was dismissed with prejudice. The court cited lack of merit, bad faith, and, in the judge's words, a pattern of intentional misrepresentation inconsistent with the duties of any community representative. Our counterclaim ended with a settlement agreement. Confidential, but let's just say my perimeter security is now powered by top-grade solar infrastructure, and Sarge has a climate-controlled K9 shelter with a biometric access gate. Karen pleaded no contest to the criminal charges. She avoided jail, but she didn't walk away clean. 3 years of probation, 200 hours of court-mandated community service, and a personal fine of $150,000, earmarked for community integrity education programs. Irony doesn't just live here, it thrives. The HOA, gone. Officially disbanded after a special vote that took place just 6 weeks after Karen's removal. What was once a structured residential community initiative collapsed under its own weight. The members didn't want another Karen, didn't want more legal fees, didn't want the illusion of order turning into real chaos. A few of them approached me afterward, cautiously, not with apologies. Not all of them owed me that, but with something else, respect. One guy even asked if I'd be interested in helping draft a new neighborhood agreement, voluntary, transparent, HOA-free. I declined, politely. I've had enough of committees. Melissa and Lucas still walk the trail sometimes. They always wave. Sometimes they drop off gifts for Sarge, treats, toys. One time, a drawing of him fighting a bad coyote with a cartoon sword. That one went on my fridge. And as for Sarge, he's unchanged, watches the land with the same unblinking eyes. Still sleeps near the back door, still responds to the command territory with a quiet intensity that makes me glad, for everyone's sake, that he's on my side. But he's a local hero now. That story made the rounds faster than anything else. A retired K9 saving a neighbor's kid from a predator. Even the local paper ran it. The headline was almost too perfect. Dog accused of attack saves child from one. No corrections, no retractions, just truth. The DA's office asked if I'd consider speaking at one of their seminars, something about property rights and misuse of civil litigation. I agreed. One speech, one crowd of rookie prosecutors who need to know the difference between a real case and a Karen in pearls screaming wolf. The land's quiet now. Coyotes keep their distance. Drones don't buzz the ridge anymore. And no one's tried to scale my fence in months, but I kept the footage, all of it. I even made a short edit for personal use. A kind of reminder. It starts with Karen's face just before she climbs the fence. That tight little smirk she wore, like she was invincible. It freezes for a second, then cuts to Sarge stepping from the shadows. A wide shot, a moment of reckoning. Then the audio of her voice. He'll never know I was even here. Cut to black. That's where I like to stop it, because she was wrong. I always know.